Hello, and welcome to the Digital Workspace Works podcast. I'm Ryan Purvis, your host, supported by our producer Heather Bicknell. In this series, you'll hear stories and opinions from experts in the field, stories from the front lines, the problems they face and how they solved them, the areas they focused on from technology, people and processes, to the approaches they took that will help you to get to the grips with the digital workspace inner workings.
So how have you been keeping?
I've had better weeks than this one, I'll be honest. I don't know. I feel like so many things happened in the world this past week, as I'm sure you're acutely aware of. And then one of my cats is pretty sick. So I guess the upside to that is that, so she's on a whole bunch of medications that she needs them, multiple times throughout the day. And working from home, I can actually do that. If I wasn't working from home, be immensely stressful, or I'd have to, the whole how do you actually do something like that when you're supposed to give them 4 times a day a medication?
Well, I can share that from being a parent. Not that pet owners are not parents, because it's like it's a different kind of child. But my son used to get tonsillitis. Tonsillitis, you got to medicate them also 6 times a day with penicillin. And I remember, fortunately working for 2 different companies and having 2 different experiences. The first one would always say family first, but never really mean it. The second one would say family first and enforce it. Which is a much nicer experience. I say nicer experience. It's never nice to have your child sick. But because the ability in both cases there was to work remotely, it was a case of, look, go do what you need to do with the family, and we've got this. If you miss a meeting or whatever it is, don't worry about it. Or if you're working because you're dealing with a child that's not sleeping because they're running a fever and all that kind of stuff. And it was usually like, with CJ, it was about once a month. And you get to a point also where you're embarrassed to say, hey, listen, my son's sick again, and they look at you like, what have you done? And it's the natural thing for someone to judge you, especially if they don't have kids. And it's just because he's going to nursery school and his tonsils were enlarged, and he wasn't at an age in the UK where they would take them out. If we were here in South Africa, it would have been the first time he got tonsillitis. It would have been one phone call and they're out. The UK had to wait till he was a certain size. So for a year, every month it was the cycle of, well, sorry guys, my son's got, I get a phone call from my wife, and she'd say, it started again, CJ's red. And red is basically his temperature's gone up so high, his whole body's gone pink. So you need to come back because we need to go to the doctor, and we go through the whole cycle. So when you work in this sort of digital way, it's great to have that flexibility to be, I was sitting in hospital rooms, replying to emails and working on stuff while we wait, because you sit there for 3 hours while you wait for someone to see you and all that kind of stuff. And as long as your job can allow for that, it works out quite well.
Definitely, yeah. When it comes to health, whether it's human family or pets, just being able, even in my situation, being around to monitor her, and not kind of being away all day, just it removes a layer of stress, even though, just being able to make sure things aren't getting worse, or nothing strange is nothing new and strange is going on, is I'd be more distracted sitting in an office all day, kind of waiting to go back home at that point.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. And that stress reduction you have because you're now there and you can see something change is huge, and it makes you more productive, I think. And it's not all about the work, but because you're not sitting at the office worrying about it, and some I got mates that have got cameras that they watch their dogs remotely. We've gone out for lunch and they've called their dog on Skype to check in. And they literally will talk to the dog for 5 minutes on Skype while you're sitting there having lunch with them. It can be quite a big thing mentally to deal with.
Yeah, No, I have a camera as well. I don't think the cats really, you can talk to them through it, but they don't really respond. It's not like they come running towards it really. But with this condition, I wouldn't be able to see. I'd just be able to see if she's walking around. That would be the only indicator on a camera. But how are you doing? That was a lot about me moaning about my situation. How are you?
Oh, we're fine. We're good. I mean, as good as we can be. I mean, the good thing about this latest revelation or this new variant is it's given South Africa a bit of good marketing for, again, things that we're good at from a medical point of view. So that's a positive. I mean, obviously, it scuppers our plans of going back. Well, at least this stage, we don't know if we'll go back when we think we're going back to the UK. But as I've said to a few people, I think we're safer here still because there's a good handle on it, in the sense that the South African government has had to handle TB and AIDS and whatever for years. So there's all that infrastructure is in place. So just another virus is just another thing to handle. But other than that, we're good. No complaints. I made the car. This is actually quite funny. I was up at 5, and normally what I do is the minute I'm up, I go for a walk, and I try to walk for 20, 30 minutes. And sometimes I try to run, or depending on how I'm feeling physically. I've had some trouble with my knee, so I'm trying to build that up. Anyway, so I go for a walk this morning, and I'm not even 10 minutes out, and it bloody starts to rain. So now I sprint back because I don't, it's coming. It's just like a flash rainstorm. So I get back in, and I'm sitting now. I'm soaked, so I've got my shirt off, and I'm sitting with my laptop, and I'm starting to work through emails and some stuff that I've been meaning to do, but I usually don't do because it's always so busy. And I'm in the middle of something, and obviously I'm catching up on emails, and I see an email that I replied to, and I said, "Yeah, look, we should have a chat about this." And the guy phones me, and it must be about 6 a.m, but because he's in Australia, it's whatever time it is for him, 3 p.m, 4 p.m. And I see the thing ring, but I don't stop myself thinking, oh, it's 6 a.m, I shouldn't answer the phone. I answer the phone, and we have like this hour-long conversation, and I keep thinking in the back of my head, what am I doing? This is like the whole point of being up early is to do work that you don't want to be disturbed during this time. Like, this is your time to do brain work, and you're letting yourself be pulled into a call for something that's not important, not urgent, whatever. It was just a response to an email. And it made me think about some of the stuff we've talked about having boundaries around your working time. Never mind that my kids are all sleeping and they're getting woken up now because I'm on the phone and all that kind of stuff. So fortunately, it was all the right time that they woke up. But it was kind of like I didn't enforce my own boundaries, and all I could think the whole morning is it's really mentally ruined my day because I was doing the stuff that I've been meaning to do and I just got into it, and of course the Pavlovian thing, I took the phone call because it was ringing. Instead of declining it, I answered it.
And did the person in Australia know that you're in South Africa?
Yeah, they know. He knows fully, and he still said, "Oh, you're up early." I said, "Well, I'm always up early." And I even, there's actually a thing in the 4-hour work week about this, where any call you take, you actually have like a set speech, a script where you basically say, "I can do a call, but it's got to be quick." I even said to him, "Yeah, this is the time of the day where I actually get work done, where I don't want to be disturbed." And the guy didn't even register that this should be a short call. And it's one of those, and I think this comes into a mental wellness thing as well. I have found there are people that are so lonely because of working remotely. And I've experienced, even though I've got a house full of people, etc. Because you're not interacting with your work colleagues physically, you're not getting that stimulation that you almost crave sometimes. And for some people, and this guy's not one of them, but there are others where they just want to talk because they don't get the opportunity to talk about work stuff. So what should be a short conversation becomes a long conversation because they need to get it all out.
Definitely. Yeah, I've experienced that as well. Yeah, that extends a lot of calls, a lot of meetings can just, and it's hard because it's like you don't want to completely cut that out or cut that off, but a lot of people do end up just on back-to-back calls all day. So it's hard to really balance making that efficient and then having time for any sort of casual interaction. Because then if you make time for that, if you set occasionally I would set 30 minutes in the week to catch up with a work colleague who in the office I would have interacted with, but working remotely, we had fewer and fewer reasons to collaborate essentially. So we would just kind of catch up and we talk about some work stuff and some personal stuff. And it was just by intentionally scheduling it in, I think that satisfied that need instead of trying to talk to everyone a little bit on, calls that were scheduled for a different reason.
Yeah, no, it's a good habit to have just to catch up with people, but it's also draining. You can't sit today I've had back to backs the entire day, and I had a half an hour gap before this call, and you just have no energy by the time you get to after 3-4 hours because you especially if you have a camera on, you've always got to be on and attentive. Whereas if you're in a meeting in a room, because you're all there physically, you can get away with making notes on your thing without staring at people. In fact, because you're in person, you're not staring. You don't want to stare at everyone all the time. It's rude in some cultures. But when you're on the video calls, you feel like you've got to be constantly engaged. And even looking away sometimes feels wrong, even though no one's talking to you. So it's an interesting one, definitely. I want to know if there's any science behind that. Any research done?
Yeah, I haven't seen anything, but it's definitely worth a look. There's broadly themes around wellness and burnout and company culture being really hard to maintain, but sort of this the social element of work, that human interaction piece. It'd be interesting to see if anyone's kind of explored it more.
Yeah, I remember during the pandemic, there was the main part of it. There was a lot of talk about Zoom fatigue, and I know a few people that were literally doing, calls 12 hours a day, and it almost becomes the same as that I'm so busy mantra that people think makes them so important. I've been on Zoom calls all day long, and you're like, yeah, but that's not good. You're not doing anything constructive in that time. Usually it's the meetings, and meetings have to be, you need a balance of meeting and brain work, collaboration and brain work.
Yeah. I've always really, I don't mind when people cancel a call or move a call, or I don't know if I've ever had someone say to me, I don't need to be on this, I won't attend, but I think people need to enforce those boundaries, and not just because, another call crept up at the same time, which is how it normally happens, but because, you're working towards a deadline, or you do have a family commitment that maybe, does that have to happen in that block? No, but is there a reason why it should, happen at that time that would make it better for your life? Your colleagues just putting calls on your calendar, they don't know what's going on with your full work and life schedule. So it's really up to the individual as well to let people know, or just enforce the boundary. And, you don't need to give your whole personal backstory, but I think the more people do that, the more it normalizes not attending every single thing.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good point. I think I remember even before the days of Zoom and Skype, sitting on these conference calls with 20, 30 people, and there's no way you're going to contribute something valuable, but you're on there because you've been told to be on there, or whatever it is. And that's just such a costly exercise for a company. I think nowadays, and actually I was talking in a group about this the other day, meetings need to be short. Call meetings at least. Not even 30 minutes, 15 minutes, 25 minutes, that sort of range. Unless you're doing something like a workshop, which warrants a full hour or hour and a half. Because it's exhausting, and you're not getting, it's diminishing returns over time. People need to have breaks and recharge and come in with what's the word, motivation.
Totally. I mean, it's almost like by having these all back to back, hour-long calls, I feel like, at least for me, if I have a day like that, I'm not, you're not bringing your best, freshest self to each call. So things maybe that could have taken a shorter amount of time get dragged on longer because you don't have time to, prepare before the call. So you're hashing more things out live, or maybe there's not like a proper agenda, or, who's even leading this call. Like those things tend to happen more and more.
No, exactly. Speaking of which, I am being pinged because I'm late for another call.
All right.
So yeah, it was good to catch up. Okay. Thanks, Heather. Catch you later.
Bye, man. Bye.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Heather Bicknell is our producer and editor. Thank you, Heather, for your hard work on this episode. Please subscribe to the series and rate us on iTunes or the Google Play Store. Follow us on Twitter @the DWW Podcast. The show notes and transcripts will be available on the website www.digitalworkspace.works. Please also visit our website www.digitalworkspace.works and subscribe to our newsletter. And lastly, if you found this episode useful, please share with your friends or colleagues.